Thank you for joining us for tonight's panel discussion on how we celebrate the holidays. Tonight's panelists come from a small part of the community, different cultural and religious celebrations that happen here in the Lowcountry. To more programs like this in the future, please let us know in the comments below. Also, let us know what other people we should include in the conversation. At the end of the discussion, you will see questions that you can answer in the comments below to carry on the conversation. So, welcome. My name is Kaylee Vaughn. I'm the Director of Exhibitions and Programs here at the Morris Center for Lowcountry Heritage, and we want to welcome you to our panel discussion on holidays and celebrations at this time of year. And I'm going to go ahead and turn it over to our panelists and have them introduce themselves for tonight's discussion. And if we'll start with you, Reverend Black.
Good afternoon. I'm Jon Black. I'm the pastor of Campbell Chapel African Methodist Episcopal Church, located in Old Town Bluffton. I'm a retired Navy chaplain, and I've had the privilege of serving this particular congregation for the last 6 years.
All right, Reverend Lee.
I'm Reverend Therese Lee, and I am the senior minister at Unity Spiritual Center, Hilton Head. And we meet, when we do meet, we meet at Congregation Beth Yam. I have been an ordained minister for 14 years and serving this community for 3. I am grateful. Thank you.
Awesome. Minister Taylor?
I am Joanne Taylor, and I am a minister. I've been a minister since 2012 in this community. I am a member of Campbell Chapel AME Church under Dr. Black, and I'm here to talk about Kwanzaa and what it means to me and to my family. That's
awesome. All right, Henry.
I'm Henry Criss. I'm an ordained minister. Served on church staff and as a lead pastor at churches in Bluffton and in Ridgeland here in the Lowcountry of South Carolina. Presently working outside of church ministry, fulfilling God's call, serving our community in other ways, and finding ways to link our everyday lives with the truth of the gospel.
All right, Rabbi Bloom.
I'm Brad Bloom. I'm the rabbi. You know, I wanted to say I was listening to Therese and Reverend John. I wanted to say I'm the senior rabbi, but I'm getting to feel like a senior. I want to say I'm the youth rabbi, even though I'm not any more young like I used to be. Rabbi at Nation Beth Yam. It's such a pleasure to have Unity Church there, and Therese, bless her heart. And I want to tell you that I'm happy to be here and join you. Our congregation has been on Hilton Head. It's everywhere from Sea Pines to Okatee. And it is the only full-time synagogue in the Lowcountry.
Awesome. So what we'll do is we're going to start out our discussion by answering the question and having you all explain the religious and or cultural events celebrated at this time of year by your group or affiliation. And we'll go ahead and start from the beginning. And if you want to go ahead and speak, Reverend Black.
Yes, for my congregation, Christmas is the second holiest time of the year, with Easter being the holiest time of the year. It's the time that we celebrate the birth of Christ, and it actually begins with what we call Advent, 4 weeks before Christmas. And we have this wonderful building of anticipation and excitement until we get to Christmas Day. Let me let you in on a little dirty secret, a little known secret. The 12 days of Christmas actually starts on Christmas Day. And now members of my congregation may not realize that, even though we say it every year, and it ends on January 6th, which is Epiphany. So most of our celebration takes place during Advent. With each week, we're doing more and more decorating. We light an Advent candle and do prayers every week as we get closer and closer to that big day of Christmas. One unique thing about Campbell Chapel AME Church is that we've partnered with our neighbor across the street, Cornerstone Church. And because of that, we've been able to increase how we celebrate. So we celebrate on the whole block. Every week last year of Advent, we had a different party taking place during Advent, and including an outdoor concert. We have children's programs. We don't like the Christmas tree. We like the neighborhood. We light up the neighborhood, illuminate the night, and that has been just wonderful. Of course, that will not happen this year, but in the past few years, that's been a wonderful celebration for us. A big part of that is combining the choirs. So you'll have a Cornerstone, contemporary rock gospel, and you have Campbell Chapel traditional African American gospel singing together, celebrating our common faith.
Awesome. Reverend Lee?
Unity is a little different. And so we look at Christmas as a celebration. However, every day is holy, and I know you all know that as well. And what we do is we look at it metaphysically. So what does it mean when you look at the Word of God, and how does it apply to us today? So the Christmas story, we believe, is everybody's story. And so part of what I do is I'll have a class on the metaphysics of Christmas, and what does it mean to, what's the tradition of the tree, and what's the tradition of the candelabra, and what's the tradition of Santa, and all of the things that we live in the world. Unity is considered practical Christianity, and so we look at the metaphysical aspect of how is it that we can celebrate not necessarily a birth of Jesus, but the Christ consciousness that gets born in us every time we choose to follow the Word of God. And so we do follow Advent as a calendar, and we also have singing and carols and hymns and things like that. What we're going to have this year, due to the grace of Congregation Beth Yam, is a outside the portico, have a celebration of candle lighting. And so what we do is we will have a singing, maybe silent night, and understanding that each time we decide that we are the light of the world and we do the will that is of God every day, we celebrate then the Christ consciousness. And so it's a year-long celebration. I am by origin Catholic, so I understand all of the great rituals of things. And so I incorporate them in, and we celebrate the truth of who each of us is every day.
Awesome. I'm going to go to Henry next, just so we kind of stick within the same kind of traditions. If you want to add anything, Henry?
Yeah, certainly. So as my colleagues have alluded to, there are many different facets when we think of celebrating Christmas or celebrating religious celebrations this time of year. And I think it's very important, while we understand the deep liturgy that informs our practices, that we look at the concerns of the folks around us in the context where we find ourselves. So as I think of celebrating this time of year, I find it very important to focus on not just the ceremony or the ritual, but really the root and the cause of what we're celebrating. As we think about Christ's incarnational ministry, we're celebrating the fact that God stepped out of heaven and came to earth so that we could be saved. And so when I think of celebrating this time of year, I think of acts of service, of really reaching out to those who maybe don't have a Christmas meal or a Christmas ham. I think about bringing the gospel out in the streets with the people that maybe they don't have a church home to celebrate with. So when I think about celebrating Jesus coming and being born on earth, for me, it really represents taking that same incarnational approach and bringing the gospel out to folks in a way where they can feel the love that we're called to share.
Thank you. All right, we'll go ahead to Rabbi Bloom.
That is commemorate 62 BCE. The holiday is It is a holiday that commemorates the pushing out of Greek forces that basically occupied the land of Judea under the Seleucid. This was after the breakup of Alexander's empire. And a group of families, one in particular called the Maccabees, decided to to out the Greeks, because the Greeks had overtaken Jewish religion, had occupied the temple in Jerusalem, had forbidden the worship of God, instead had imposed their own polyglot theological system. So the Maccabees created a military response, and by miracle of miracles, the Greeks, and threw them out. The story of Hanukkah comes to fruition. The forces came into Jerusalem 162 BCE and restored the temple and purified it of the profanities and the impurities of having another political power use it for horrible purposes. This was the most sacred in Judaism, the temple. And if you go there today in Israel, the Western Wall, it's still a go-to, shows that there is, as you know, in the Torah, in the scriptures, there's the description of the menorah in Judaism that always burned, was lit by the priests. But how did it burn? It needed all candles at that time. That's something later on. So the clergy, which means the priest in the biblical sense, not in the Catholic, only had enough oil to last for 2 nights. To restore this menorah, this candelabra that has 6 on it, with one is set the day of creation, day of rest. But it only had last for a certain amount of time, 2 nights. And the miracle goes that 8 nights. By Hanukkah, celebrated for 8 nights. And I have in front of me a design of a Hanukkah menorah. So it's 1, 2, 3, 5, 6, 8. And this is the lead one here that lights the other candles. So every night, Jewish families across the world light a candle each night until it turns into 8 for the 8 nights of Hanukkah. And I think that if I had to identify a prevailing theme is, in Judaism, like in other religions, history is our theology and theology is our history. And determination for freedom. So we have lots of celebration. The fact that we're in America and Christmas is such a predominant holiday in the Christian culture. Hanukkah has been elevated to a huge, it's not a major holiday as compared to speaks of Christmas as the second most important holiday. For us, it's really minor compared to past other holidays in our system, but the theme of freedom and the theme of self-determination and the theme of miracles, which is what the story of Hanukkah's menorah lasting for 8 nights, the oil lasting for so long, is part and parcel of the legends that people have a chance to celebrate. And
Thank you so much. All right, Joanne, we're going to go to you next, and I'm going to go ahead and share some of the images that you have given to me about Kwanzaa.
Okay, thank you. God, in his wisdom, gave me an assignment when I moved here. And I had been doing this assignment for many years, which was to work with addicts, alcoholics, battered women, abused children, victims of all kinds of abuse, and work in hospice. But when I came here, there was an avenue to work with in all those areas, but there weren't celebrations. They had gullah celebrations. I was looking for in Chicago, I'm from Chicago, and I was looking for cultural celebrations that were of an African-American nature. We have a lot of cultural things here, but there weren't very many cultural things for the African-American community. The Gullah people have a celebration. In February, they have a whole month of celebration, and then sometimes in June or July. But I was missing the celebrations of Kwanzaa that I had attended in Chicago for many years. And so my husband and I started to celebrate Kwanzaa here in our home. And for the most part, for 8 years, we just celebrated alone. 2 years ago, I felt the need to include more of the people that I'd met. I felt the need to do that, to invite others into this cultural event. And so I started to tell people about the meaning of Kwanzaa. And Kwanzaa is, some people ask, is this a religion? It is not a religion. It is derived from the phrase Matunda ya Kwanzaa, which means the first fruits or harvest of the Swahili, in Swahili, I'm sorry. And we celebrate it from December 26th through January 1st. Dr. Karenga started this movement in, I think it's 1960, I'll look at my notes, I think it is 1966. He started this in the United States along with the US organization, and he started it as a result of the riots in Los Angeles. We needed something as a people. We needed something to celebrate and something to bring us back to our roots. And so we started to celebrate Kwanzaa. In Chicago, you have huge Kwanzaa celebrations. And just about everybody that is anybody, so to speak, is at the Kwanzaa celebrations. But down here, it was a few people were celebrating, but not so many. As I was about to say, 2 years ago, I started to celebrate it here. And I invited people from my church, which is Campbell Chapel, and people from all the churches here. But I also looked around and realized that I didn't want it to just be a Black people's thing. I live in a community of people. And so we started to invite people from other cultures to come. And much to my surprise, my house was filled with all kinds of people that year. And it was the most exciting Kwanzaa that I'd ever had. Now, they have Kwanzaa celebrations in Chicago as well that have an integrated group, but not nearly as, that wasn't happening here for the most part. And it wasn't nearly as important to me then as it is now. There are several symbols. I think it's slide number, this one, shows you all the elements of Kwanzaa. The Kinara, which is the candelabra that represents each day of Kwanzaa, there are 7. It starts with the black candle, which represents Black people. The red represents the blood we've shed, and the green represents the harvest or the growth of the Black people as a community. And so part of the growth for me was to invite other people so that we can all learn from each other. The Mishuma or Sabo is what we call the 7 candles. The Muhindi are the ears of corn, which represent the offspring, the children of the stalk, the parents of the house. The Zawadi are the gifts. They're always handmade gifts, or generally supposed to be handmade gifts. They're not like Christmas where you go out and run up your credit card and everything. This is stuff that the kids make or you can make on your own. And it is to me, it's a very sacred time. We speak to each other by saying habari gani, which means what's the news, when we greet each other. And you're to respond with one of the principles of the day. It depends on what principle it is. The principle of the day would be, I might say umoja. If you say habari gani and it's a unity, day of unity, I would say habari gani. I say habari gani and you would say umoja. And every day there's a different candle, a different principle. It is an important part of the ceremony is to have the candles lit in order. They're lit in order. The black candle, then a red candle, then a green candle, then, and it goes every other day. It's a different candle. And the children generally light it because this is a very family-oriented holiday. And I was missing my family so much when I came here that I had to have another family. God knew I couldn't take it. I need a new family. I need some family people here. And so that's what we did. And the elder during the ceremony raises the tambiko, which is a gesture of unity. He drinks from the kikombe cha umoja and then passes it to others to share. Well, we can't do that now. That's for sure. It's COVID. We cannot do that. So, and you say, and if you'll see how this woman, the next slide shows a woman who is also really, really enthused about saying Harambe. The most important things in the Kwanzaa celebration that I didn't mention was that when we pour libation, which is tambiko, we pour it, and it's not just to pour it in the earth or into an earth-like thing. It is to call out the ancestors who have gone on before us. What we're basically doing is paying homage or homage to them, and so that they never die in our spirit. They're always with us, and we never forget. And that's one of the things that my husband and I actually incorporated that in our wedding. That we had to wait for the ancestors to get that. We had to wait for the elders to get to the wedding. They were hours late, but they got to the wedding because we wanted to pour libation for the ancestors, their ancestors. So that is why it is one of the most important parts of Kwanzaa. Thank you.
Thank you.
And she says, Harambe! And it is, let's pull together. Let's pull together and get through this. Let's pull together and help each other. Let's pull together and love each other. And so it is a very spiritual day. And the last day of Kwanzaa is such a celebration. All kinds of food, all kinds of activities for the children. It is a very special time. And I'm glad that it comes after Christmas and yet along with New Year's. And it's one of my favorites. This is how it looks in Chicago. The slide at the top on your left looks like Chicago. The one on the right is much like the one we had last year because it was in the field house of our development. It was in, that's not the name of it, but I call it a field house. It was in the entertainment center of our development, and there were all kinds of people there. And for me, that is really special. And with being a minister, my job is always to bring people together as best I can. That's what God expects from us, right? Everybody else has mentioned that God wants us to do that. And so for me, I needed to have a group of people to celebrate this with. And it is an awesome holiday. I will miss not being able to gather this year. I acted me already. In that I cannot invite people to my home. I cannot invite people to celebrate with me. So we're going to try and do something on Zoom and celebrate. hopefully some of my people from Chicago will be on. Some of my friends from Chicago will be able to attend. And I certainly hope my church family and people here in Bluffton and Hilton Head will join us in this celebration. So that is my spiel on Kwanzaa that I absolutely love. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much. So yeah, thank you for segueing into that. So we'll go ahead and let others kind of touch on that next question of what is the impact and or implications of COVID-19 on this year's festivities. And I think we all can feel how this time of year is going to be different for everyone based on, you know, what we're used to.
Definitely, there's an impact. The downside is we're looking forward to doing events in the public school in Bluffton and in Shelter Cove, which we did last year. Reverend Black was featured star in lighting the menorah last year with the mayor. I'm always honored when he joins us and supports our congregation. Him. We can't do that this year. We're going to have a Bluffton event, but we're not allowed to invite too many people because the mayor and the town said no celebration. Just like Kwanzaa, as we learned, we have to do it under the radar. We'll light the candles. We'll have a few things, a little bit of singing, and no food, no things that we love to do. Potato pancakes. We call them latkes. It's not the potato, it's the oil part of having, there's a down all your activities. Because Jewish kids, Jewish kids, Christmas. It's great for Christians. Jews want to have something that their kids are enthusiastic. Because kids are kids. Got to give them positive identity. So Hanukkah is something special. So every Friday night, which is an 8-day holiday, we have a night 100 menorahs. Everybody brings a menorah and lights it during the service. It's an amazing sight. All these kids lighting their Hanukkah menorahs in the sanctuary, and we're singing songs, and everybody is just happy. And it's just like we can't go in the sanctuary. So this is what we're going to do. Other churches have done this. We're going to have an outdoor service where we're going to have 40 or 50 cars. We bought a little device where we're going to broadcast on FM radio, a booth like with blue and white lights where we'll have myself, the singing, the cantor, and musician, the car. And we will be able to broadcast that through Facebook Live congregation. So, we use technology the best way we're capable of it, what God gives us the brains to do these things. Thank God there are people who know how to operate it, and we are absolutely. So we're not letting COVID-19 define our about. It will certainly impact how celebrate, but it will not just celebrate. It's different. It's a different format. So people will come in their cars, like a drive-in movie. We'll tune on to FM 87.5, and they can hear it in the car. So I'm really thrilled about that, and I think that I don't want to see the kids without opportunity as a community to gather. I think that's the biggest thing that this has hit religious communities throughout the country is unity. And that's what we stand for, individual and communal participation. Sir, what you wanted me to address?
Yes. Reverend Lee, Reverend Black, either of you guys want to, or Henry, anybody want to add anything to the question about implications or impact of COVID-19 on this year's festivities?
I will. We've been doing Facebook Live for several years, and so it was not a big transition for us on Sunday to do that. Our congregation is folks with great maturity and wisdom, and so Facebook Live has allowed us to reach a younger audience, and so that will continue. We will do Facebook Live for our candlelighting as well. We have a daily devotional called Daily Word that all sorts of people in all denominations read. And so there will be one that is for it's called an Advent booklet. And every day there's a daily reading that has some kind of scripture. And so we'll do that. Everyone will get one of those. And if you want one, I'll send one to you as well, because they're pretty wonderful. And then we do the honoring of continuing for everybody to understand that church is open, the building is closed. And so this way we do prayer calls every week. Those will continue, probably a little bit more. I'm going to go around. I go to everybody who is local. I have a lot of out-of-town people who watch us, but they will see me and I will be at the end of their driveway with their Advent booklet and on my bike or walking, and then I deliver those so that we have a face-to-face. Some you can't get into because of where they live, and that's okay based on restrictions. And so the theme of miracles, I love what Rabbi Bloom said, every day is a miracle, and everything is holy now, as John Mayer says. And so what I invite our congregation and anybody is to see where there isn't a miracle, where there is not a sense of holiness during this season, of course, but every time of the year. And then we end up our season as well with COVID, where we have a burning bowl, letting go what doesn't serve us, and then a white stone when we rename ourselves as the new year comes. And so COVID is allowing me as a minister, I didn't plan on this when I went to seminary to be a pastoral minister, but we make 80 phone calls a week. So every single person who wants a phone call gets them from me or my prayer chaplains. And so that continues with a sense of knowing that they're cared for. E-news go out, and so I start taking apart the Christmas story, and they get an email from me once or twice a week between December 1st and Christmas about what is it? How is the Christ presence showing up as us, through us, as we transform our consciousness and celebrate Advent as well, of course. Thank you.
Well, for Campbell Chapel, we're wonderfully located in an Episcopal system. Our bishop sets guidelines and those kind of things, and we follow orders. I'm a retired Navy chaplain. I know how to say, aye, sir. And we had our fall convocation, and wonderful experts were brought in, and he talked about pivoting. There was many different things, but pivoting to a new reality. We're not, from their perspective, there won't be any reestablishing of the old, that something that's happening now is going to impact the church in such a way that there'll be a new reality. And so the beginning of COVID, all our congregations, and especially Campbell Chapel, since I'm the pastor there, we get into programs. We distributed so much food, 2 semi-trucks bringing farmers to family boxes every Thursday. The soup kitchen open almost every day, but Sunday. We have a gentleman who's 90 years old delivering 100 meals on our own version of Meals on Wheels, and not to mention other programs of reaching out to those. And the pivot is that the bishop sees the need for us to really focus on people, meaning our people right now. And the whole Christmas story is about God visiting humanity through this disenfranchised, disinherited, outsider family, which is the emblem for us for our liberation theology. God is always on the side of the disinherited, always on the side of those who have been alienated by society and culture. We don't see God from above, we see God from below. And we feel you get a distorted view if you look down, but you get a positive view if you look up. And so we're going to be looking for the lost sheep and the lost lambs. So even though we'll still have our Zoom celebrations and our drive-through celebrations, the focus has shifted for us. And so very similar to Reverend Lee, folks will wake up in the morning and see the members of the congregation in their front yards. We're doing other supportive things right now for our members, because the pivot is from programs to people. And we want to make sure that our people get through. And I want to say one other thing, regardless of COVID or not, Christmas is always binary in our community. There are folks who have lost people.
Yes.
This is an anniversary season for them. In the past, we could take members over to the Lutheran Church for the Blue Christmas. I don't know if they're going to have it this year, but there are always folks who are in extreme pain and people in extreme joy. And so we're going to look for those who are in extreme pain, and those this year may outnumber those in extreme joy because of COVID-19.
The only thing that I would add is just to point out what everyone has really already pointed out, but just to amplify that, I guess, to call it out, is the fact that as we move into this season of celebration, what for many people on the surface level is a time of joy, the reality is that for many people, even absent COVID-19, this can be a time of heartache and pain. And the truth of the gospel, as I understand it, is life is a mixture of joy and a mixture of pain. And really, as we experience this season through the lens of COVID-19, the reality is that pain is exacerbated for many people because they can't rely on those public gatherings where they could seek solace and community. And there's a lot of people that are stuck because of restrictions and health concerns that are left isolated. So I'm very encouraged as I hear my colleagues here speak, and as I see other things happening. There's such a focus on reaching those people that are would traditionally be disenfranchised or left behind, even through our best efforts. And I think that really we can't and we don't. As again, I'm very encouraged to hear we don't allow COVID-19 or this present pandemic or any of the other concerns to define how we approach our religious observations this time of year. However, they certainly inform it, and we can pivot. And I think that that's an excellent word to use. We can pivot towards the positive and towards people, and really embrace the values that are celebrated this season.
So one of the next questions we had, and this kind of, I'm going to say it, and I'm also going to segue it into something I thought about when I was just listening to everyone's responses to some of the first questions we talked about, was what can we glean from learning about other kind of cultural and religious traditions within our community? And then also, I think this is very important. What is the significance of interfaith cooperation in the Lowcountry when we're talking about developing a sense of community? Because that's what I think is very important at this time. We talked a lot about how connection is very important and community is very important. And especially this year when those bonds seem to be so fragile because people don't have what they're used to having as far as like being able to speak with one another and be in community with one another. How is this? I mean, the importance can't be denied. And this year, I feel like there is even more important. But yet, we're kind of facing obstacles when we're talking about that. So, anything you want to say as far as like the importance of learning about other cultures and traditions and accepting them, and what that says about kind of building community?
Well, I'm going to call out Rabbi Bloom. He has been sponsoring different opportunities for religious leaders to speak out. And so I'm going to submit to the guru and hear his remarks.
That is so gracious of you, but not surprising because that's the kind of man. I don't know where to even begin on this, but I can tell you, first of all, this is a time where we have to recognize that no religion is an island. And if there's anything that this country ought to symbolize, affirmation of the fact that we do different things, but what we do in our heritage, each in our own way, affirms something greater about being citizens in this country and validating our worship, our belief in the divine, and our heritage, each in our own way. I think that's what these holidays ultimately reinforce, with affirming whether it's Kwanzaa or it's Hanukkah or it's Ramadan. or whatever it is. It's a good thing. I think that the challenge we have, making religion a beautiful tapestry of lots of, I think it's trying to recapture of the holidays in creative ways that reinforce core values of each of our own is really an important thing, and kind of resisting the marketing of these holidays. If clergy can recognize that they are all interconnected in this American landscape, that our holidays will have more meaning. I would love to have an opportunity to speak in the church. And I think that when it comes to the COVID, we are playing a very important role in instilling confidence about where we're going, as well as all the other values. So that's where I come from on this. More talk, more conversation, more leadership.
Awesome.
I want to piggyback on the notion of leadership. We know what each other believe and as clergy, but I think what's so important is when clergy can say we can show respect for everyone's humanity, everyone's tradition. You know, if you think, and most of us in our hearts think the way we approach God is the best, then you don't have to worry about the rest. You don't have to be threatened or feel insecure. You can just sit and meet. Rabbi Bloom and I have met on several occasions. I think we're scheduled to meet during the middle of the Christmas or the Advent season with the rabbi, the bishop for LDS, the Catholic nun, African American pastor, and I'm not going to try to win anybody to some new tradition, but we are going to celebrate our humanity and our respect, and we're going to learn something, and we're going to show the nation that you can have unity in diversity. And right now, I think our nation needs that more than anything else. We don't have to agree. And my common example of that is marriage. God puts opposites together. One seems like they're from Mars. The other one seems like they're from Venus. It works really well, you know. But it sure is a challenge for a Martian and a Venusian to get together. But boy, when they do, it is wonderful. And so I feel that gatherings like these are vital for our nation. They're vital for our spiritual health. It helps us to respect and to hear things. You know, I've heard people say, and I'm getting a little political, but during this campaign, I don't see how a Christian could vote for A or B. I've heard it on both sides. But then when you start talking, you realize, hey, we're just people with our viewpoints and there are reasons we feel the way we do. And we may never agree on those things, but we can still respect each other and respect each other's opinion. Because that's all it is, an opinion. I love the verse in the Bible that says, let God be true and every human a liar.
There's a great document that the Lombard Mennonite Peace Center puts out. And the Mennonites are so foremost and leading, I think, in peace when all those things happened in Philadelphia. And so they always say, we agree to disagree in love. Great, I make my board members, you know, if you got an issue with me, because they're going to have one, you know, then you have to look at this and then use it. So if we could all use this, we hand it out at the, you know, on the table as everybody leaves. So I agree with you, gentlemen, about this. And what I love is that Joanne is on this call because I'm often the only woman. And so this is where I give high kudos to Rabbi Bloom, who said, hey, Chicago, that's what he calls me. What do you believe? And I said, what do you want for your people? I said, I want my people to have a relationship with God. And he said, well, that's what I want. I said, I know. We all want the same thing. We all have different ways. And so people will say to me, you know, why are you a minister? And I say, because I know from my life experience, when I did not have a relationship with God, it was hell. So I don't have to wait to go to hell. I've been to hell. And so why not us all work together, you know, and color and genetics, who cares? If we all have this same message of the one path to the many paths that are out there, I should say, to the one God. And so what I believe for this, Kaylee, the reason it's important, when you sit down like we're doing right now, and I've done this many times all over the country with different, just how do you pray? People all pray for basically the same way. And so once you get past the dialogue of, wow, he looks different than me, or she looks different than me, or oh my gosh, there's a woman here, whatever it all is, we all have more alike than we have as a difference. Yeah. And that's what I talk about with my grandbabies. When you say, well, Nana, I believe God's here. Yes, everybody believes God's here. And so this is a good thing. And this is, we're talking about, Pastor Black is talking about, the people who are hurting. And so I always will say, put your hand on your heart, and that's where God is too. And so thank you, Kaylee, for this. This is so important for us in this dialogue. And I am I'll let y'all know, I am pushing in with Rabbi Bloom to say, could we be the medium of conscious conversations with clergy about topics that nobody wants to discuss? And open it up through the Zoom channels or whatever, or this channel or whatever. So stay tuned, because I'm going to be contacting you on behalf of he and I.
I love having these kind of conversations. I think it's very important. We're a cultural organization. We are an institution that's dedicated to telling the history and art and culture of the Lowcountry, and this is a part of it. And we have so many people from so many different walks of life who live down here in this small area of the state, in a very small state, but so many different backgrounds. But to y'all's point, we have way more in common than we have in differences. And so that's something we like to celebrate. And it's just I've always been someone who I learned so much from my conversations with people, and that's why, that's why we wanted to do this. And one question I wanted to ask you, Joanne, because this made me think about it. When you talked about, so Kwanzaa was a very, new thing to me a couple of years ago. I mean, I've heard about it a little bit as a child growing up, but I mean, as a kid, I grew up in the 90s and it really wasn't talked about. And then I remember shortly after, I think a catalyst for really learning about it, I think also people were learning about it more in the mainstream, was, cases of police brutality and some of these other things that were coming out. And it made me very, when you brought up the Watts riots, that made me think about the parallels that can always be drawn, and the fact that, the relevance of this is still there, of course, and it's not gone away. Do you think that this year, in 2020, is going to be a year where Kwanzaa is going to almost grow in importance and significance, and more so than it has in the past? Also, just because people are kind of forced into this kind of self-actuation and really self-reflection, and having to look inwards on themselves because we aren't able to kind of congregate like we're normally able to do. Do you see that happening maybe?
I don't know, Kaylee. If I have anything to do with it, yes, people will have to deal with it if they want to associate with me, because this is what I'm called to do. And so anyone that speaks to me about race or any of the other dramas that are going on in the world right now know that I believe that God loves each and every one of us the same. Whether we agree with each other or not, God doesn't have stepchildren, is kind of what I say to my friends. And so I don't know whether it'll be more important, but in my life, it will be significant. And in the lives of those that I know, it will be. I've spoken to some of the people, my friends in Chicago, and many of them are disappointed that we cannot have the same kinds of ceremonial things that we used to do, or celebrations. However, we're trying to pull together something that invites everyone. Now, not everybody feels that way. I have friends who are like, this is our holiday. Well, then you don't need to come to the Kwanzaa celebration that I'm having, because it is our holiday. I refuse to have a racist holiday. I'm sorry, I won't. And so anyone that wants to participate in Kwanzaa with me will have to, they'll have to find it okay to have a biracial, interracial, whatever you want to call this, a mixing bowl is what I call it, of people. And that's, you put all the ingredients in the pot and you see what comes out. That's Mama's stew was like that. That's how Mama made her stew, you know. And I see us as a pot of stew with all kinds of goodies in it.
I was going to add to that. So the faith tradition that I come from is I would consider myself theologically a Baptist, and that means different things to different people. But one of the distinctives there is the authority of the Bible, right? The Bible is the Word of God. And many times, folks who believe like I believe will make appeals to Jesus's words. And some folks' Bibles, as a matter of fact, his words are highlighted in red. I mean, they make a great deal out of the words of Jesus. And certainly, I think, I find all the words in the Bible to be sacred and holy. And I believe them. But I think that sometimes we miss, we adhere to Jesus's words, or we try to, and we miss adhering to Jesus's ways that are described in the Gospels. And as I think of myself as a follower of Jesus, and especially in light of the discussion we're having, I think that there's a couple things that really stand out. One of them is Jesus was not somebody that avoided the difficult conversations. Jesus was somebody that addressed them, and he went after the self-righteous. He went after the people who would speak one way or proclaim to believe one thing, and their practice shows that they really chose to be to lord over people or disenfranchise people. Jesus sought out those, as Reverend Black pointed out, that those that needed liberation. As a matter of fact, the whole reason he came was to liberate mankind. And that's the second thing that I think of when I think of being a follower of Jesus and the value of gleaning from other faith traditions and their celebrations and beliefs. As everyone else has already indicated, you don't have to agree to appreciate. I don't have to believe what somebody else believes to respect it. And I think that that's perfectly clear in a lot of circles, and sometimes it gets overlooked. The fact is that what I believe is that God left the glory of heaven to liberate mankind, to liberate humanity. And he didn't come to the Christians. He didn't come to he didn't come to the Baptists or the Methodists. God stepped out of heaven and came to humanity. And I heard, I had a seminary professor one time that said Jesus only talked about two kinds of people in the Bible. He talked about enemies and he talked about neighbors. And the answer to both of those groups of people, the way we're supposed to treat them, as we're supposed to love both of them. So I think that's the value. When we get down to it, we learn from other people that maybe they don't believe the same way we do. We realize that they're people too, and we're all in this together.
Yes, I agree.
But everybody has different, like you said, we all talked about this already, but everybody has different experiences. Everybody has different stories and stuff like that from this time of year. But this year in particular, 2020 I just feel like it's a different it's a different year for everyone. And it's been a trying year, and it's been but it's been an opportunistic year. I think a lot of people have grown out of this year. I mean, personally, I've grown a lot over this year. And so I think it's also just a realization of the ending of this year. No matter how hard it was or how easy it was or what came of it, is for, I think, people to just really think about that and to really ponder what just happened.
Yeah.
I really feel like that's what 2020 is about. If anyone has any questions that you want to give out to the audience who is watching, who you maybe want to kind of start a dialogue, feel free to share any questions you may have or any thoughts you may have to kind of pose to the audience, and we'll make sure anyone who wants to answer or respond in the comments are able to do that, feel free to do that now.
If this is a season that reminds us of and our spiritual roots, so to speak, maybe some questions like this. When was the last time you broke bread with someone from another faith? When was the last time you went out with someone from a different race? When was the last time you went into a house of worship? And just a thought. What does I want to talk about love? Can I love somebody that I totally disagree with? In mind, is there a spark people that we disagree with, no matter what our views are? I think we have to challenge ourselves any way that we can to how can I say, untie out of knots that we have in the body of our country. And I think that that's something to ask. These are all fair questions that are of our viewers and in our country, because
Help us grow. Please like and follow us on Facebook. Share this virtually speaking program with friends. Thank you for supporting us. Morris Center for Lowcountry Heritage.